to our moderator, who is Henry Bibber. Um, if you were in the county in the 60s or 70s, you may well remember he was our planning director during that time. He came to Prince William County in 1967, which is before I did. He's a year before I ever came to Prince William County, and he came as an intern in the planning department, went on to Virginia Tech and got his master's degree in urban and regional planning, and then he was our director of planning in 1972. He went on to become, after that, the director of planning for the town of Herndon, where he retired in 2007, but all this time he has lived in Prince William County and is residents of Occoquan Forest in Mid-County, and he has always been a member of the Midco Civic Association. So please welcome Henry Bibber. We are very happy to have him here, and he will introduce our panelists. Okay. This one has a little echo in it. Okay. Did it sound all right out there? Yes. Okay. Okay, it's all yours, Henry.
So I use this one? I use this one?
Yes.
Is it turned on?
No.
Now it is.
Now it's on. Okay. That's fine.
Well, it's great to be back to the Committee of 100. It's been a long time. Sometime I'll tell you the story of why there was such a long time in between. The county's comprehensive plan, and more specifically our land use plan, provides a vision for the physical development of the county. This evening we want to look into the question, is our vision slipping? What might be causing our vision to slip? For instance, are we seeing properties in the Gainesville area, for instance, currently shown in commercial classifications being proposed for residential classifications? Are we seeing proposals for redevelopment in the Woodbridge area that do not meet the community's aspirations for truly urban character of redevelopment? Are we sufficiently convinced in the value of having a rural crescent that we are going to strongly support it? Are we obtaining sufficient park areas to serve our burgeoning population? Or are we doing enough to protect the quality of our water supply? Are we experiencing balanced growth? Here to talk to us about our land use planning efforts, successes, and challenges is a panel of true experts. Jeff Kazmarek, Executive Director of the Prince William Department of Economic Development, Sherman Patrick, planner with the law firm of Compton and Dooling, Bob Pugh, active citizen and member of the Prince William Citizens for Balanced Growth, and John Karnak, chairman of the Woodbridge Potomac Communities Civic Association. I will introduce each of them before they speak. So, we'll start with Jeff Kazmarek. Jeff is the county's executive director of the Department of Economic Development. He's relatively new to the county. He arrived here last April. He has more than 30 years of professional experience in economic development. Prior to coming here, he was the CEO of the Economic Development Corporation of Kansas City, Missouri. Previous to that, he was Senior Vice President for Business Services and Community Development for the Michigan Economic Development Corporation. And prior to that, he was Director of Community and Economic Development for Oakland County, Michigan, which is near Detroit. perhaps with similarities to Prince William County. As head of the Department of Economic Development, Mr. Kazmarek leads the county's efforts to encourage new business to locate in the county, to retain existing business, and to encourage expansion of existing business. So, without further ado, Mr. Kazmarek.
I don't know if I can reach. Oh, you can. Well, good evening, everyone. It's great to be here. Thank you for coming out. I hope this is going to be an interesting evening for you. I've see some familiar faces out there and some new ones as well, so I'm anxious to get to know some of you a little bit more. Every time I hear that introduction, all I can think of is I'm old. When I go back and think about the jobs that I've had. But as Henry said, I am relatively new. I've been here, I think it's 38 weeks now. I like to talk as I expect a mother would talk, when her 30 weeks, when my kid's 38 weeks old, but pretty soon I'm going to have to convert that to a year of service. So it's almost 10 months. But it's been a really interesting and fun 10 months. I'm delighted to be here in Prince William County. Having worked in different areas in Michigan in the past and then Missouri and then coming here, as I was telling the folks at our table, economic developers, when they're looking at new job opportunities, always ask themselves this question. One, is this a community I want to live in, myself, my family? And two, is this a community that can be successful, that I can market, that I can sell? And the answer obviously is yes, because I'm here. So I am very bullish on the future of Prince William County. I have a background actually in planning, and Chris Price and I traded professions and academic backgrounds. He started in economic development and went on to planning. I went the other way around, have planning degrees and got into economic development. So we speak the same language. We work very well together, and so I think we're simpatico on a lot of issues. So, but a county like Prince William, it's good to have, I think, that planning background and understand the issues, because this is a very diverse county, as you well know, and I am certainly discovering. But that's one of its great strengths, is that Prince William is diverse and has different markets and different opportunities. The key to success, though, going forward, is to be able to capitalize on those very specific and different opportunities in different areas. What's important in Super Principe's area, for instance, may not be relevant in other parts of the county and vice versa. So I'm trying to understand as clearly as I can what the challenges and opportunities are in each of the different geographic areas of Prince William County, because they certainly are. Because for me to do our job successfully in economic development, we need to be able to present a business proposition that is unique to the different parts of Prince William County when we're talking to companies that are looking at this from different perspectives themselves. So that's what we're working on right now, and I'll talk about some of the efforts we have in that particular area. Is this just right click?
Right click.
Okay.
I'm sorry, left click.
Oh, okay. Voila. Thank you. Just tell me left or right. I can do that. I know I can do that. Let me run you through a couple of sort of high-level points on what we're doing in economic development and how that would relate, I think, to some of the questions and presentations you're going to get into more specifically on the land use area, and I think we'll tie that together at the end. This is our, what I just call this is the money shot, so to speak, of Prince William County. When we're working with a prospect, we're talking about Prince William County, we try to put on this one slide some of the key attributes of Prince William County. Can you see that in the back? If you can't, apologize for that. If you can't, let me know. I'm happy to email you this PowerPoint presentation afterwards. So apologize for that. I mean, I can hardly read it from here. So again, a function of age. But in any case, population and workforce are the high-level messages here that Prince William County is growing. Obviously, we're well aware of that. Population now over 400,000, labor force of 234,000. At-place employment, that is people that are here now, around 115,000. Unemployment rate at 4.3. Median income very high, one of the highest in the United States. 45% of our adults have a college degree. The 10-year growth trend is really the more important thing here, I think, in terms of the number of jobs that we've added on an annual basis, our population growth percentages and so forth. I won't go through that other than to say that we've been on a pretty steady growth path, even despite the downturn in the 2007-8 period, which I know impacted Prince William County very hard, particularly in the housing area. But nevertheless, if you look at that on a long-term basis, it really is a blip on the overall. It's kind of like hopefully your stock market portfolio. Accolades, Prince William County, this is a very, very important thing. I think it's the fact that the county has a AAA bond rating from the three rating agencies, Fitch, Standard & Poor's, and Moody's, and we just reconfirmed this past summer. The county was issuing bonds for new school construction, so we had conference calls with all those agencies and reconfirmed that AAA rating. A very, very small percentage of the 3,000 counties in the United States have a AAA rating, so that's a very important thing, and what it speaks to is very strong fiscal management and strong economic growth. Job growth, number 1 in Virginia, number 3 for counties on a nationwide basis. 7th wealthiest county in the United States in terms of median household income. One of the best 100 communities for young people, very important as we try to attract young technology-driven jobs to this area. And then named to CNN Money's where the jobs are for 4 of the last 5 years. So just trying to get that quick message out, that high-level elevator speech, if you will, money shot. This is where it is. And then the last thing I'd point out is our proximity to D.C. Sometimes you get lost in somewhere in the D.C. market. Prince William County is not a name that is well known out in the hinterland, so to speak. So we have to show our proximity to the nation's capital, and that helps position us with regard to this very, very large market of over 6 million people. Going forward, I'm left clicking, hopefully, there we go. The Board of County Supervisors just adopted our new strategic plan. I know L.L. Bourne and I think a couple of the others of you were on the strategic planning committee and went through that process, and we enjoyed that. I'm halfway through already?
You are.
Why, I better get going. Too much rambling here at the beginning. But I think I want to emphasize the key points, because this is what drives what we do in economic development every day. Strategic plan said attract capital investment to diversify our economic base, ease our residential tax burden, and catalyze economic growth. And secondly, to attract high-quality jobs that match the educational and skill profile of our workforce and increase at-place employment, that is, jobs that are physically here in Prince William County for our residents. And then we've got, in the new strategic plan, tactics such as advancing the county as a life sciences center, implementing next generation strategies for innovation technology park, strengthen relationship with our key development partners, expand our business retention efforts, develop a cohesive brand identity, leverage our the competitive analysis that we're undergoing right now for our marketing strategies, and finally emphasize a robust international and entrepreneurial effort. And I'm happy to elaborate on all of this later on, but that's what the county board is telling us our charges for the next 4 years. And they've given us specific metrics. Our annual targets for at-place employment, targeted jobs, which is on our 4 target industries, IT, life sciences, corporate headquarters, and federal contracting, are laying out there in terms of specific numbers that we are to meet on an annual basis and over the 4-year period. And again, I'll be happy to go into that in more detail of how we got to those, but that was in discussion with our strategic planning committee. We've got 4 sets of major initiatives underway right now within economic development. The first is in life sciences. We think this is one of the real growth opportunities for Prince William County going forward. We've done a strategic analysis of the life sciences industry here, and we've implemented already the first recommendation coming out of that, and that was to develop a science accelerator, which we have done now and out near Innovation Technology Park. The county has leased space there, and we will be subleasing that to life sciences companies that need a wet lab. Wet lab space is in very, very short supply, virtually non-existent in Northern Virginia. Maryland has lots of it, and most of the life sciences companies in the metropolitan D.C. area are located in Maryland. You've got Johns Hopkins there, you've got NIH, National Institutes of Health, and other assets. So Maryland has probably a 20-year head start on Virginia in terms of life sciences. Yet, with the assets we have at George Mason University's campus here in Prince William, Innovation Tech Park, and some of the companies that are already starting here, this is an area where we think we can really grow our own industry. Secondly, we have a comprehensive competitiveness analysis underway. We are looking at how Prince William County stacks up against 6 other peer metropolitan areas around the United States, and as well as the DC area, and asking ourselves the question, what is our competitive position vis-a-vis those markets? And what are our strengths and what are our weaknesses? And then also looking at our target industries. We've had these 4 targets in place since 1999. And like any good business, you should be looking at your business model relatively often, not every 15 years. So we took this opportunity to really look at that and ask ourselves the question, are these targets still relevant for the next 4 years and going forward? Thirdly, we're doing some internal processes in terms of our customer relationship management systems and a number of things to, I think, more contemporize how we do business and how we can react. We really want to be very, very quick in terms of responding to customer requests and so forth. So we're doing that inside. And then finally, the strategic plan that I just mentioned, tying what we do on an annual basis to the county's 4-year strategic plan to make sure it's in sync. I think I missed a slide there. Oops, let me go back, because this is the one I really wanted to emphasize with you. Go forward. Oops, backwards. I apologize for this. I'm kind of locked up. Hold on, make this something. Oh boy, that's not good. Sorry. If I can get to this one slide back here.
Bring your mouse over the left side and then double click on the slide.
I'm sorry.
Put the mouse back.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's why we're not going. This is, yeah. No, I'll find it. I will find it
Scroll
right here.
down if you'd like.
ED services, and this is the one, actually I want. Okay, sorry for the size. I can elaborate on this. This is where I want to tie into the land use aspect of this. What are the decision drivers? Because I know some of the questions you're asking are, why are we doing this instead of what we said we were going to do, right? I mean, why are we doing more residential when we said we wanted more commercial? Or why are we doing something at a lower density and so forth? These are the drivers that our customers, our prospects are telling us drive economic development decisions. First of all, a business-friendly government environment. Companies have many, many choices in terms of where they can locate. Having a business-friendly government in terms of rules, regulations, speed to market, and so forth is critical. Secondly, the availability of physical sites and or buildings that meet the company's needs. You have to have physical product that the company will respond to. If you look at right now at our website, and we track everything that's coming in, the vast majority of requests that we have for information are not about land, but they're about buildings. Do you have this kind of office building, industrial building, and so forth? So that is really important as well. Thirdly, a long-term land use plan and zoning which is aligned with those clients' needs. I can talk further about what's being planned for updating the economic development section of the county's comprehensive plan, but that's key. Access to labor and talent, access to markets, and I talked about our proximity to the DC market because that's critical, within industry clusters and supply chain. In other words, companies want to know they can locate an area where they have customers and where they have folks that can support their particular business. So that supply chain component is very important. Certainty and speed in the development process itself, that kind of ties to a business-friendly government environment. Transportation infrastructure, utility infrastructure, which in this case would also include internet utilities, very, very critical for us, especially in our IT sector. And then finally, financial incentives. This has to be an area where it makes sense for the company to do business from a bottom line basis. So, apologize for the raggedness of this, but I wanted to leave you with this because this is where, in our perspective, the drivers of company decisions intersect with what the county has in store from a land use perspective. And these are, the drivers are being very much impacted right now by what's going on at the federal level and on a national level, and in fact, international level. So that's a conversation I'd like to have further with you in terms of those externalities, those things outside our control, and why they're driving the decision process differently now than they were in other parts of the business cycle. And that's a very important concept to understand. So I'm done. I got the time card, and be happy to chat with you later about this. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Our next speaker is Sherman Patrick. Sherman Patrick is no stranger to the county. He is an accomplished professional urban planner with 30 years' experience in Northern Virginia, in both local government and in the private sector. He spent many years in the Prince William County Planning Office, serving as Chief of Plan Implementation, Chief of Current Planning, Planning Project Manager, and Zoning Administrator. And many of us who go to the county building from time to time got very used to seeing Sherman in his various roles. And he was a very reliable advisor and informant as to what was going on. In these capacities, he became very familiar with the issues involved in the land use development process. He prepared amendments to the county zoning ordinance and to the design and construction standards manual, and he shepherded through the review process many major land developments. As occurs with some of our best local government planners, however, Sherman left the county. He went to work in the private sector, where he is now a planner for one of the county's major land use attorneys, Compton and Doolin. He currently represents property owners and developers in land use issues and in the zoning approval process, working in Prince William County as well as other nearby jurisdictions. Mr. Patrick serves as a consultant and expert witness in land use issues and is able to provide insightful perspectives on the land development process. Sherman.
Thank you, Henry. Now I'm all nervous because of that introduction. You all have to realize that when I was starting out in the planning office, I was there one day doing what I always did, and Henry walked in the door and asked me a few questions, and I started explaining to him all about land use planning and all the concepts of zoning and everything that he should know as a citizen. And then after I had gone for a while, he told me that he had been planning director 5 years before I got there, so I sort of fell on deaf ears. But I just want to let you all know that with respect to me leaving the public sector, I am such a good planner. I left in 2004. 2005, the housing market started going down. 2006, things started looking pretty bleak. And by 2009, it was an utter disaster. So just, I had that ability to see into the future and know that when the time was right to make it work. But I survived. I thought a lot about this presentation over the past month after Jack was kind enough to invite me. And I thought about it in a lot of different ways. And my presentation is inclined to be a little more esoteric than Jeff's was, obviously, because I'm a planner and not an economic development director. But I'm not sure why this isn't loading. It's coming along. Okay. I don't think I get myself into trouble until maybe the fourth slide. You're going to load. I have confidence. But one of the things that occurred to me after I spent a long time thinking about it, I really did, is that communication is such an important part of planning. And it's a very important part of everything in our lives. I started lecturing my teenagers when I came up with this idea. But I think sometimes with communication, or sometimes with planning, the issue truly is communication. Because I'm not sure that we all have the same idea about what the comprehensive plan should be and what the comprehensive plan says, what it doesn't say, and what the real vision for our future is. As I kept repeating this sentence over and over to myself, I kept saying, first I'd say yes, and then I would say no, and I would say, well, maybe, and sometimes. But the truth is, it depends on who you are and when you ask the question. From a perspective of communication, everyone approaches these things a little bit differently, based on our age, our gender, where we are from. We have different expectations for what the county should look like, and depending on the time, we may have a different want as well. I remember being in Hilton Head, where all the streets are beautifully buffered and the signs are all modest and indirectly lit, and having to go out one night at about midnight to find children's aspirin because one of my kids were sick and I was on vacation. And I cursed every planner I could think of for all of those tiny signs because I could not find a Walmart or a drugstore anywhere. So in that particular instance, suddenly my past instincts for smaller, more subtle advertising were overcome by an immediate and pressing need to find something that I needed. So all of those things go into the equation when we start talking about planning, and so it's very difficult to know exactly how to answer this question. The comprehensive plan, of course, is a series of policy goals and strategies, but they also need to be realistic, and that's where economics comes into things. We need to really understand the market as well. If we have a great idea, and the one that I hear all the time is, we need more white tablecloth restaurants with linen napkins. We need more of those in the county. Why don't we have more? Well, there's a very simple reason we don't. We don't eat enough. We don't go out to dinner often enough to sell enough meals for those restaurants to come here, or more of those to come. We're getting some now, but that's a function of population. It's a function of disposable income. There are a lot of things that go into that. So we have to also have to have a realistic understanding of the market and of the economy and how those things come to pass. Office is something else that people would like to see. They would like to see some mid-rise to high-rise offices probably in the county and places depending on who you talk to. And, frankly, we just aren't there yet. And so we need to understand, we need to have a lot more communication on these sorts of issues, and everyone needs to ask a lot of questions to make sure that they are understanding what the plan really says, because frankly there are so many different strategies and priorities in the comprehensive plan, you could justify just about anything that you need to plan. It's very hard to weigh those things. Now the real landmark dates, I think, in Prince William County for when the comprehensive plan or when there were planning and zoning events that really changed things and made them different, were two of them are in 1982. The first was April 27th, 1982, and that was when the board, on one Tuesday evening, decided that they would bite the bullet. It was tremendously unpopular politically, to institute a 10-acre minimum lot size requirement in the A1 agricultural district. Up until that time, it had been a 1-acre minimum lot size. And so people were pretty, it was very easy to go out and record developments that didn't have any sort of rezoning connected with them, and you didn't get profit conditions, and you weren't able to control the design a little bit. So that was an important day. The next was just a few days later, just a week later, was May 4th in 1982. And on that date, the county adopted a totally rewritten zoning ordinance. And as you can see from the slide, that's when we finally started having zoning requirements in Prince William County that required landscaping, that had significant setbacks for commercial products or projects. Before that, you could build parking lots right up to the edge of the road. And a number of other things. And then later came add-ons like stormwater management and things, the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Act. But these, to me, are the really, really big landmark dates when things changed. And then in 1989-90 era, because it took a long time, because it too was controversial, there was a very substantial rewrite of the comprehensive plan text. A lot of land use designations were redefined and redescribed in the text, but the map did not change very much at all. And if you go back and you look at a 1982 or 1978 comprehensive plan land use map, you won't see a whole lot of differences. They really have not changed very much. And then we've had amendments and updates, as I said before, from time to time. They're significant depending on your perspectives, but this is when the county really took on major projects and really did something with their land use plan. This is just a slide, and I'm half through my time, so I'm going to go quickly. This is a slide of the land use plan and the zoning map. And I just use this, I know you can't see it very well from back there, but you can get a feel for it from the colors and the line weight and things that are on it. The land use plan map, when it was changed in 1982 and then again in 1990, really didn't depart very much from the zoning map. And you can see today the two are very similar, except that there are areas that could be rezoned, but they were already subdivided, so there's no need to rezone them. The central part of the county could be rezoned to this rural, semi-rural residential designation, but there's really no need. It's already developed. And you can't see it from your seats, but there is an awful lot of 1 acre lots along Route 234 all the way up to Route 15. This is where I get in trouble. This is my fourth slide, I think. I'm comparing our land use map to Brand X. You see that the Brand X map looks a lot more detailed. It has a lot more lines in it, a lot more colors, and you look at our map and it's looking kind of plain. These are approximately the same scale. I first looked at them and I thought, oh, well, one's a different scale. Well, no, it's not true. They're about the same scale. 1 inch equals 2 miles before I put them on the PowerPoint. And the difference between the long-range land use plan in Prince William County and Fairfax County is not just that map that I just showed you. It's also the layers of planning that they've done. And these are exhibits that you saw on the corners of the other map. But what they do is they've divided their county into 4 major areas, and then they divide it into planning districts. This map is just a major arterial map. It's useful, but it doesn't change the districts that are planning that much. And then they have also in this that you can't see what we almost called centers of community. They have specific planning sectors. And this map in the lower right-hand corner is for the Merrifield planning sector. They call it the Merrifield Suburban Center. And I put this in here because I think most of you who are from around here know Merrifield, and you've seen the transformation that it's going through. It was an area that was once agricultural, became residential, then became industrial, and was not a very pleasant place to drive through and look at. And now they are reinventing it after 40 years of planning to make it more of an urban center. They have 2 urban core areas, one here around the metro station, and then another one down here close to the intersection of Route 29 and Gallows Road. So here's 2 more layers of maps. This is a third layer of maps that they have available for their planning exercise. This second map is an identification of major attributes. This again is the Merrifield Suburban Center. Their major attributes and opportunities. And then they refine it down. They break that whole Merrifield Suburban Center area into a range of other uses, A through I, or K. So they break it into all these little segments, and I highlighted H here because then I wanted to put H in and show you that H, subunit H, or land use unit H, even breaks down into smaller subunits. So they have really thought about it. They've broken it down on a parcel by parcel basis, and they have tried to take the reality that exists, the transportation infrastructure, the mass transit at the top of Merrifield Suburban Center. They've taken all of these elements, they've done the hard work, and they have created a comprehensive plan that is specific and that communicates well to the public what has been done. And this is what I call the hard work. This is where they took all of the data and put it together and broke it down and figured out what the property could yield, what the transportation routes could yield. So my answer to the first question is that, no, we haven't lost our vision. However, there's a lot more work to be done. And communication is the beginning of that, letting people know that our comprehensive plan isn't done. There's a lot more work to be done, and we need to just keep doing that. And Chris asked me to say this last closing comment, give the planning office more money.
The slides will be up on the website, so you won't have to worry about dumping them this evening. We'll put them up there.
If you give them, we will.
Thank you, Chairman. Our next speaker is Bob Pugh. Bob is a resident, let's say, would you say the Prince?
Resident of Coles District, and I own a business in the Gainesville District.
There we go. He is a chartered financial analyst and certified financial planner, and the founder and president of Insight Wealth Management Incorporated, which, as we just heard, is located in Gainesville. Bob's varied career in financial management includes serving as an economic analyst with the CIA. No one raised their hand. Maybe I don't. Maybe I don't. Okay. As director of investment research for a private firm and as a faculty member of Johns Hopkins University. From 1998 to 2003, Bob was a senior financial analyst with Prince William County. He therefore has knowledge of the fiscal impact of development proposals and valuation of residential and commercial real estate. As a citizen, Bob has applied his financial background to a number of issues and challenges here in the county. He is past president of the Prince William Symphony Orchestra and served for 8 years on Supervisor John Stirrup's Budget Committee. Most significantly for us this evening, Bob is a co-founder of Prince William Citizens for Balanced Growth and worked with other county residents to defeat the proposed Brentwood residential development in 2006. He continues to be a proponent of balanced growth in our county. Bob?
Okay, we got it. Thank you. My background training is an economist, and as you know, we are the dismal science. I promise not to disappoint. I am here for the bad news tonight. I have done a little reminiscing. As my introduction said, I did work for the county. I was a senior financial analyst from 98 to 2003, and I remember working with Patrick. He was there back at that time. I worked closely with Jeff's predecessor, Martin Briley. I used to do all of the return on investment analysis, tax break analysis, all of those things for the economic development prospects. And I talked to Chris a little earlier, and back in the days when Rick Lawson was the planning director and Tom Eitler was in long-range planning, I used to conspire with those two quite a bit. And it was not uncommon. I'd get a call that said, "We got a developer down here again with a bogus economic impact. We need you to come help tear it apart." Those were fun days. Hey, I had a great time with that. That was up until about 2000, 2001. I was the fiscal impact person. The county even paid to send me down to Georgia Tech at one point for fiscal impact analysis training. Worked with Steve Fuller with GMU to develop a fiscal impact model. We did all of those great things. And then around about 2000, 2001, the county decided we're not going to do fiscal impact anymore. Gone. No more. Finished. And that's when the job started to get pretty boring and not very interesting, and so I started looking at other things, and that's when I went off to start my own business. I left the county in 2003, been working on my own business ever since. So let me get to the question, land use planning. I'm going to address this as an economist, as a fiscal person, not as a planner, so you won't hear planning and economic development terminology from me like Sherman's excellent discussion of the comprehensive plan. I'm going to be a fiscal person on this. And left click. Okay, all right, here we go. Are we losing our vision? I would like to say that we abandoned our vision about a decade ago. When I worked for the county, we had a target 25% commercial development in our tax base. That is long gone. The county has not looked at that for a very, very long time. Overall, the county has failed to achieve a balance of growth in commercial and residential. Development policy in Prince William County for the past decade or so has essentially been revenue negative residential, and it has overwhelmed any commercial development. The results, we have essentially built a low-wage economy on service jobs to serve residents rather than high-wage job creation. 2/3 of our employed county residents have to commute outside the county in order to find a good job. We have skyrocketing property taxes, despite what some of the supervisors might tell you. We're looking at a decline in the quality of public services, more crowding in the schools, more crowding on the roads. We're looking at a deterioration in the quality of life for county residents and an economic environment that is increasingly adverse to businesses that might otherwise want to be here. I told you I'm a dismal scientist. I was not going to disappoint on that. So let's look at some of the details. First, we want to look at the fiscal impact of residential development. I used to do a lot of these fiscal impact models. There's a lot of different ways that you can design these. I used to do these frequently, assess a lot of the fiscal impact analyses that came through the county. I built a very simple one. I'll show you the numbers, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. But in fiscal year 2013, the average new residential unit, that is a new unit being built in Prince William County, came with it a negative fiscal impact of about $900 annually. That means that that unit consumed $900 a year more in public services than it paid in taxes. The proffers from the residential developers barely covered, hardly scratched the surface, and the proffers don't even address operating impacts, only a limited degree of the capital impacts. When you have a situation like that, well, anyway, here's the break-even. I've been accused before of doing these numbers as a black box and never showing anybody how I got them. This is it. I'm not going to go through this, but anybody who is interested, I will be glad to go over the details. This will be in the slides. This will be posted. So, no secrecy, complete transparency on how this analysis is done. This is a very broad fiscal impact analysis, and it incorporates both operating and capital impacts. And the comprehensive, I think I skipped over a slide. When you bring revenue negative residential development into the county, it has to be covered in some way. It can be covered either by higher taxes on existing landowners, property owners. It can be covered by a deterioration in the quality of public services. That's largely what we've been looking at. Or it can be covered by growth of high-wage commercial development. That's what we have not been getting in the county. As an example, the comprehensive plan amendments that the board looked at back last March, if enacted as proposed, would add $1.6 million annually to the county's structural deficit. This is a quick, Frank, you might remember this. I sent this to the board last March when y'all were looking at it. It's kind of hard to read this, because it's not projected. This will be in the PowerPoint available. I've included Stonehaven in here because Stonehaven is still under debate. It's going to be passed in some way, and if it is, we're going to anything close to what was proposed initially. We're going to add over 1,000 new residential units, and we're going to lose about 13,000 jobs. If we get something along the lines of a mixed-use project, the way development in this county has been going is about most of the commercial development is going to be low-wage retail employment, which does virtually nothing to improve the fiscal position of the county. All in all, if those CPAs are passed more or less as proposed, many of them have already been passed, we're going to look at an added structural deficit of about $1.6 million, and that will grow with time with inflation. We have developed a very unbalanced tax base in Prince William County. I've already mentioned the 25% target. The goal was abandoned years ago when the county continued to focus on residential rather than commercial. Most of the commercial development is low-wage service. I want to get to some slides on that. Okay, this is Prince William County's tax base over the past decade. As you can see, we got under 80% residential very briefly in 2009. That was largely because of the housing market collapse. We very quickly got back over 80%. We do not have a balanced economy or tax base in Prince William County, and we're not pursuing policies to make it any better. We're looking at skyrocketing property taxes. As I mentioned before, taxes go up. When we have new residential development, it has to be subsidized. And if you look at the trend, the blue line is total property taxes. I broke that out from overall taxes. The green line is population. And as you can see, up through the early part of the last decade, population and property taxes were growing about at the same pace. And then around about 2002, 2003, property taxes skyrocketed. And we are still on an exponential trend in the growth of property taxes. The reason for this is the excessive residential development that is not paid for, that does not cover its way in taxes. We see a blip there, the triangle. That's just an anomaly based upon the real estate bubble If you take that out, you still see we're on a rapidly increasing slope of property taxes growing much, much faster than population. We are building a low-wage service economy in Prince William County. Let me get to, I'll just jump on over some of these, as total at-place employment, we, no offense, Jeff, but we see all these statistics about the job growth in Prince William County. Well, that's true. Over the decade, basically 2001 to late 2011 that I looked at, the county grew from 83,675 at-place jobs to, in 2011, 108,573. That's an increase of almost 30%. However, population grew almost 39%. So the growth of population is far outstripping the growth of jobs in the county. 75% of those new jobs were in the lower half in terms of wages in the county. So yes, we did add a lot of jobs, but no, job creation did not keep pace with population, and the job creation we had was primarily low wage. We lost IT employment. Let me go to a couple of the summaries. And the growth by wage, this one is a little harder to see. One of the Virginia Employment Commission breaks down the economy into 20 sectors. The largest, the fastest growth in wages over the past 10 years was not IT, it was not management, it was not professional, it was public administration. In other words, county employees, the county government. That is where we have seen the fastest growth in wages in the county over the past decade. Education is not included in this. Education in terms of wage growth ranked only about 12th or 13th. It's in the bottom half. Those are our teachers. Those are the people who work for the school system. Okay, I just got the 2-minute warning. Let me try to zip through this a little faster. In employment growth, most of the employment has been in the low-wage sectors. The structure of our economy is basically the same thing. About 20% of the jobs are retail services, low-wage jobs, Walmart, that sort of thing, accommodation, food services. One of the bright spots is we're gaining jobs in education services, basically the school system. That also is consistent with a residential economy. As you are adding more and more people, you build schools and you add teachers. The problem is we're not paying them anything. Education ranks 12th or 13th in wages in the county. Public administration ranks first. If you look at overall creation of jobs, 2001 to 2011, we grew almost 25,000 jobs. Only 6,170 were in the top half of jobs ranked by wages. Almost 2,500 of those were public administration. So take 6,170 minus about 2,500. That tells you that is all of the private sector high-wage jobs we created in an entire decade. And these are Virginia Employment Commission numbers. They're not mine. Conclusions. Is our vision slipping? Again, as I said when I first started, we abandoned our vision about a decade ago, when we decided that we were no longer going to have a 25% or better target for high-wage commercial business of development in the county. The results have been an unbalanced economy and tax base, higher taxes, decreased standard of public services, more congestion on our roads, overcrowding in schools. And Jeff, I certainly wish you success. I hope everything you said happens. But the problem is, the way we have been developing the economy in this county, we are already losing high-wage jobs. There was an IT company that moved from around Quantico down to Stafford just about a year ago. And if we continue on the pace that we're on right now, we're going to have a purely residential bedroom community with no room for commercial, and we are not going to be able to grow any good high-wage commercial. Nobody is going to come here. Thank you. Sorry for the bad news.
Well, our next speaker is John Karnak. John has lived in Woodbridge for over 40 years. He's another old-timer. He is retired after a career as an engineer working in the federal government and in private industry. While at EPA, he helped develop a program to properly dispose of radioactive material used in industry, and he has contributed to international agreements in which this important environmental problem was involved. John has been a volunteer for many years in his church and in the Woodbridge community. More recently, his interests turned to the Prince William County budget. He is one of probably very few persons who has actually read the entire county budget. Most significantly for us this evening, Mr. Karnak is the chairman of the Woodbridge Potomac Communities Civic Association, which was started in 2008 by citizens who wanted to see a new Woodbridge. A new Woodbridge. This work has brought Mr. Karnak into direct contact with the county's comprehensive plan and the very challenging issues of transportation, land use, and redevelopment in Woodbridge and the rest of the Route 1 corridor. John?
This is the second time in my career that I was offered to go first, and I should have. I don't think I'm going to be nearly as controversial as everybody else. And by the way, Jeff, I'm much older than you are. I'm an engineer. That's probably worse than being an economist, I'm not sure. But I've been in the area for over 40 years. I've really lived my adult life here. And I've lived in Woodbridge that entire time. And I've seen things change, and I want to talk a little bit about that tonight. I'm here as the chairman of the Woodbridge Potomac Community Civic Association. And we put out a survey to the folks that are members, and transportation, beautification and land use, and redevelopment were the areas that they felt were most important for us to concentrate our work on. And that's what we've tried to do. We also participate in other civic events, and that's why I'm here this evening. We've been in business as a civic association for about 5 years, but especially in the last 2 years, we've gained a lot more momentum and we have a lot more participation, and I think we have an opportunity of making some improvements in the area. We meet monthly and have to put in a plug for ourselves here, September through June. Our February meeting, we're going to have the county budget, and any of you are welcome to come. It's a presentation based on what has been presented to the Board of Supervisors. It gives everybody a chance to see what's there and ask questions. In our March meeting, this is the third time now we're doing the state legislators. We get them just after they come back from Virginia. They each make a presentation and they throw it open to questions and answers. And I think we had 65 or 70 people the last time. We expect an even larger crowd this year. We just recently set up a Facebook page, and we're also on the New Woodbridge website. You've heard these figures before, bond rating and so on and so forth. Those are all very important and very good. The last one is the one that has been touched on already, and the one that I wanted to emphasize, that our 85% of our real estate tax revenue comes from houses, residential properties, and only 15% from commercial. We saw some figures in the last set of slides dealing with the last 10 years up to now. I got these numbers from the Council of Governments, and there's a couple interesting things here. One is a quarter of our workers travel more than an hour to work, and I was one of those. I know it's tough. The other thing that I thought was interesting is that 75% of our workers drive to work alone. And that tells me we're not doing enough with our public transportation in the county. And that number has increased from last year. Look at the figures for labor force and at-place employment, and both of those are rising faster than population over the next period of time. And that tells me that we're going to have to pay more attention to having jobs here and having places for these folks to work. Somebody is thinking that's going to happen. We need to make it happen. We have lots of planning documents. I'm retired. I spent a lot of time getting ready for this presentation, probably more than I should have. My wife says I spent more time than I should have. But there are lots of documents. I've got a notebook on the end of the table there. It's an inch thick, and those are just the ones that I printed out to read. That's not all the ones that I looked at. And the thing that tells me is that we have lots of work that's been done in our planning. We got all kinds of planning that's been done. People have spent a lot of time, a lot of effort, and folks that know a lot more about planning and future and so forth, economy than I do. And we need to take advantage of those. Because if you don't know where you're going, you will end up somewhere else. If we don't take advantage of these plans, we end up with something like this. The guys planning the roads and the guys planning the houses didn't talk to each other and work together and make sure that it came together. I'm not even sure that's not been doctored, but I don't know. That's not an original. I didn't take the picture, so I don't know. I've got ahead of myself. Hold on just a second, folks. Excuse me just a moment. I need 3 hands and I only have 2. We have a futures report, we have a comprehensive plan that stretch over a long period of time. Now there's been some concern by one of the other speakers that these are maybe not as good as they should be. Maybe they're not, I don't know. I can't judge that myself. But they are in place, and if they're not good, then we ought to work on them and improve them. If they are, we ought to pay attention to them. I also pulled the strategic plan and I went through that in some detail. And we noticed that there's a series of strategic plans we do here in the county that all fall under those 2, the futures report and the comprehensive plan, over that period of time, so that we have an opportunity to modify the strategic plan and help to keep looking at where we're going and seeing whether or not we're getting where we want to go. I plagiarized readily from the strategic plan because I thought there were some things here that are important to take a look at. What do we want? Increase in-place employment, and that's one of the points that was made here just a minute ago. Increase new jobs related to new business. You can read these. I don't have to read them to you. But let's, how can we bring more of these jobs here so we don't have to go someplace else to work? How will we get there? Good question. How can we do it? I live just off Route 1, and if you see there on that 3rd bullet, Route 1 redevelopment is a major issue. I was here when there was a thriving Route 1. There were lots of restaurants. There were all kinds of things, a couple of hardware stores, grocery stores. It ain't like that anymore. But what that does give us is an opportunity to do something else and to leapfrog over some of the things that may have been happening in the meantime and make this into an area that people want to come to. We're right on, just off 95. We've got the river right there for transportation and recreation both. We're right between Quantico and Fort Belvoir. Boy, my time is half gone, okay. And I'm on slide 12, so I'm doing well. I pulled this from the strategic plan, and obviously I am not an expert at PowerPoint because I don't know why those colors went like that, but they did. There's 5 areas in the strategic plan, 5 goal areas, but I'm going to try to talk about 2, transportation and economic development. What did I do? There we go. Transportation, Route 1. How many of you travel Route 1 on a regular basis? Now, the rest of you ought to do that sometime. You got to come down Route 1, headed south, down around where the giant shopping center is, if you're familiar with that area, and then look back up the hill. Not just Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, but Saturday as well. As soon as the express lanes turn the other way, Route 1 is dead stop all the way south. We need to fix it. Transportation needs, VRE runs north every day. Those trains come south. We ought to be able to, as we add businesses to the area, let's think in the long term in terms of using VRE to bring people back into the area. Metro to Prince William County. This past Saturday, Chairman Stewart was on Think WTOP and said, one of the problems we have in trying to get the FBI headquarters to Prince William County is we don't have a metro stop. We're not going to get it next week or next year, but we need to keep it in our plan and we need to think about how we're going to get it there. I've looked at the budget for the last 5 years, and every year PRTC says in the budget, we're running at capacity, we don't have any spare buses. We need to do something about that. Why are 75% of people driving? Maybe it's because they don't want to stand like this on a bus. I don't know. Possible ferry service. I know this is one that some people think it's a great idea, some don't. Personally, I think it's probably a good idea, not only to run north and south, but also to run east and west, to bring people across the river. By the way, remember that in, I believe it was 2009, when Sully landed the airplane in the Hudson River, it was the ferries that first came and picked up those people. There's people alive today because those ferries were on the river. Road improvements, I mentioned Route 1. How many of you know that there's a section of Route 1 from the Occoquan down about a mile to Mary's Way that's in the planning, the Route 123 interchange, the whole 9 yards? Marvelous. There's been a section from Quantico North that's already been done, and a second section that's in the planning. But there's 1.3 miles in the middle that's already a bottleneck that's going to only get worse as soon as those other two pieces are done. You can read it. You can think about it. Are we going to wait and see what will happen, or are we going to make the right things happen? We have to keep working at this. If you build it, they will come. Interestingly enough, I went on, of course, Google, and looked at the source of some of these things, and it's amazing how many different people are the original authors of some of these things. This one, for those of you who've seen the movie The Field of Dreams, If You Build It, They Will Come, is in there. But I read a financial article over the weekend, and the author of that article said, you know, Amazon and Netflix did exactly the same thing. They got a vision, they decided to do something, they did it, and people came. You saw the effect of it. The North Woodbridge Plan was developed, 2-minute warning. Okay, I'm just about right. 2 slides to go. North Woodbridge Plan discussed by an Economic Development Task Force that the supervisors had in place. I attended the May 2011 meeting. It's a good mix. North Woodbridge now. It's a good mix. It feels right. Step outside the box. It's the most advanced opportunity in the country for development. We ought not to let loose of that. We ought to make sure that we make the best use of that property in that area as we can. Throw this up here just one more time. We got the plans. We have a choice. Lead, follower, get out of the way. We can lead, we can try to make the best of what we can do in the future. And if not us, if not now, when? If not us, who? George Romney said this. He was the only one who took credit for it at that point, although well, I think General Patton did it with an extra word in there. I'm not sure. You can imagine what that is. He was in a desperate situation with a tax problem, with a finance problem, and he said, we've got to fix it. And to the best of my knowledge, he did. That's it, folks.
Okay, now we come to that great part of the Committee of 100, and that is the question and answer period. Now, let me remind you all that if you have a question, you raise your hand and stand and tell us who you are and where you're from, and state your question, and indicate which panelist your question is directed to. So,
I've got the microphone out here. Do we have any hands up? No questions from this group? Right behind me. All right, Brianna. And remember, questions, not statements.
Hi, I'm Brianna Altman, and I live in the Occoquan district. And I think my question may be for Bob, but I'm going to take full advantage of Chris being here. So my question to you is that if we see things going in a different direction, things like example I keep hearing that banks are only going to lend money in high profit, low risk opportunities. What does that mean? It means apartments for Prince William. Based on what Bob said, apartments would be a bad thing for Prince William. How do we stop it? If we're slipping down this slope, how do we stop it? What do we do?
Are you directing this to our guest? No. The questions are directed to the panelists. So,
Oh, okay. Sorry, Chris, if you want to chime in too, but that's a fairly simple answer. In the land use planning, the board is not obligated to change the comprehensive plan. If a developer comes in and says, I want to do apartments or whatever the case may be in this particular location, and the comprehensive plan already allows for that use and all they need is rezoning, then the board, for the most part, is obligated to go forward with that rezoning. And that's not really much of an issue. If, however, which is so often been the case in Prince William County, a developer comes in and they want to put residential in an area that's been planned for commercial or job creation uses, the board is under no obligation whatsoever to implement that comprehensive plan amendment. And without the comprehensive plan amendment, the rezoning is irrelevant. I'll give you one example, something that happened just this year that should not have happened. I forget or it was last year, I forget, we're already in 2013, in those CPAs that I talked about before. The one, whatever the name, Bradley Square, whichever one, the one where the racetrack is right now. The racetrack was we live close to it. I will agree, somebody says it's noisy, it's annoying. Yeah, we live close enough, we hear that as well. So I'm not going to dispute that point. But the main thing was that the racetrack was a private business. It was paying taxes and generating positive revenue for the county. In the comp plan, that land was designated for job creation, not residential. But the developer came in and they put forward a CPA and a rezoning request to change that whole area from job creation to residential. And the board did not have to approve that. They could have said no on the CPA, the comprehensive plan amendment, and it would have stopped right there, and that land would have stayed in commercial tax revenue positive use. But instead, the board decided to approve the CPA, and what is now generating positive tax revenue, which would have generated positive tax revenue in commercial uses, is now going to be occupied by several hundred new townhouses that are going to impose an additional tax burden on the citizens of Prince William County. Finished.
Thank you, Bob. I hope that addressed your question.
Are there any other panelists who want to comment on that?
Sherman.
I thought that it might be helpful to have some different perspectives. First, you need to understand that there are many assumptions that go into some of these analyses. And the first assumption that I would point out that perhaps was flawed is that there was going to be ever a commercial user or a high employment generator that was going to occupy that particular piece of property. In my own estimation, we have way too much employment planned property in the entire county. I think if we did an analysis and we did a comparison to other jurisdictions, we would find that the percentage of land area that we have allocated for employment type uses is well beyond what we could reasonably expect to ever fill up in the future. And if you do that, and you can compare to other jurisdictions to see that. And Jeff is doing a market analysis now, and the Department of Economic Development, when they have that, I think it will provide us with some very instructive information. In addition, I'm not ready to buy into that every house is a negative revenue generator for the county. Back when Bob was at the county and I was at the county, we did an analysis when Vern Ewart was there, and concluded that houses at that time that were over $385,000 in value were the break-even point. And those homes became positive generators above that rate. So, if you hold the number of children constant, and, education is the major cost of any type of public service, if you hold the number of people in the household constant, which I think is true, I don't see rich people having more kids than people who are below the magic number, whatever it is today. Then at some point housing absolutely does become a positive generator. Maybe on average you can conclude, because we have such a wealth of housing that was built before 1970, that we're not to the point yet where the new houses that have been built are pulling everything else up. Well, they would be pulling it up, but not enough. But we have that to overcome. And you have to understand that community building is an evolutionary process. And I was going to ask you all, when no one raised their hand to ask us, who here remembers Parkington? That's what we now call Boston and Arlington. In the early 1980s, Parkington, there was a mall there that was just built. It was brand spanking new, and everybody thought, wow, this is really something. Well, everything else was small, one-story retail strip commercial with no parking. So they had all of the characteristics in terms of building area that we have in Prince William County, except they didn't even have parking spaces for those uses. All of that has been revitalized now, and now the Boston Mall is dwarfed by all of the growth that has occurred around it. That happened in large part because of transit. And transportation, absolutely, as John said, is our number one problem. And I see Charlie Grimes in the back. He and I, a few years back, were on a committee together, as was Frank was on the committee as well, it was called the Mobility Committee. And we were looking at how to update the county's transportation plan. And one of the things that we found was, when you do the analysis, the cheapest way to get people to and from work is an automobile. It's the passenger car. Because it is, when the cost of pavement and the automobile is paid for by the individual, costs the public less money to get them to and from their jobs than does mass transit. And that was a real surprise to me, because I joined the committee with the expectation that I would be there cheering for VRE and for extending the subway out, or metro out to Prince William. And I still think ultimately that's the solution. But the other part of the equation that people have to understand, that the automobile, or automobile traffic, is the number one subsidized form of transportation in this country. Every time the county or the government builds a road, you are subsidizing the single occupancy vehicle that we all complain about. So, in planning, we have an adage that mass transit is built so that other people can go to work so that I can drive my car. And it's kind of true. We all sit around in meetings and we talk about how much we would love to see mass transit expanded, and how many people tonight rode together to come to this meeting. That's an exceptionally large number, but still not good enough. How many of you ride carpool to, well, I'm not going to answer that question. Anyway, I've said enough.
Sherman, I remember that fiscal impact model you referred to very well. In fact, I was the liaison with Steve Fuller and George Mason University when we developed it. It was a highly flawed model. It did not take into account capital cost. It only took into account operating costs. It was basically assuming that when new residential development came in, that it would not require any new roads, new schools, anything like that. And even on the operating side of that fiscal impact model, they excluded a large number of important operating costs. The reason the model was so flawed was, and by the way, the county never used it. It wound up being so flawed that it was never actually applied to anything. The main reason that it was so flawed and the county never used it was because the process of putting it together included a lot of representatives from the development community who were pressuring the county and Dr. Fuller. It basically wound up, the process of developing that model fiscal impact model, basically came like buying a new car. What features do you want? What do you want it to do? And the end result was something totally useless. The other point that you were making about too much commercial, you yourself made some very good points about Fairfax County. Fairfax has a much better balanced economy than we do. We have far, far too much residential in this county. We have some 20 or 30,000 units approved for development right now. Chris could probably give us a more precise number. And if you look at the comprehensive plan right now, there's another 50 or 60,000 units that could be approved. So I disagree very strongly with you that we have too much of our land designated for commercial use. We have nowhere near enough land designated for commercial use, and we are continuing to develop as a low-wage, residentially based economy. And the other point was, going back to the racetrack, why do we have to take townhouses? Because that's the only thing somebody wants to do there right now. As you said yourself, this development is it's an evolutionary process. I agree with you completely on that point. And we're not going to get all of the good commercial development right away. It's going to take time to do that. But if we tear down every area in the county that can be built on now and put townhouses and other residential, then yeah, you're right, we never will get the commercial on it. We're going to have some better planning, some longer-term planning that is going to, not take every residential development and every townhouse everybody wants to plop down in the county. We're going to have to take a longer-term perspective on this, and we're going to have to allow for the high-wage commercial development.
Well, thank you, Bob. I'd like to ask Jeff the follow-up. Sherman suggested that we had way too much commercial industrial zone property. But what about in a growing community where we need to have a supply of land which is designated for those uses, even though in the long run they won't all be used up? Is this an advantage for economic development to have that supply? Yes.
I'm writing some thoughts down here as I heard the discussion. A couple classic conundrums, if you will, for a unit of government or an economic development person or a planning director and so forth on these things. First of all, let's talk about the market. The market is what drives development or doesn't drive development, regardless of what your comprehensive plan says, regardless of what your zoning ordinance does, so forth. I mean, those are impacts. But at the end of the day, the market determines when things will happen and to what extent they'll happen, the intensity that'll happen. And as much as we'd like to completely control our own destiny, you've got these external things that happen: lending policy, sequestration, Fairfax County success, Loudoun County. We don't have Dulles Airport, isn't in our backyard. I mean, there are drivers, the kind of things that I mentioned earlier, that determine pathways for development. So that's the first thing to bear in mind. You've got kind of your theoretical, which you'd like to have happen, your plan, which you need, absolutely. And then you've got what the market is saying is going to deliver to you. If you look at our vacancy rates right now for properties and so forth, you can see that our office vacancy rates are actually pretty low. So there's a balance between delivery of product and the absorption of that product in the office market in Prince William County, which is interesting because Fairfax County has twice as much vacant Class A office space as Prince William County has in total office space. So landlords in Fairfax County are cutting unbelievable deals on office space and so forth. So the market is pushing office type developments as companies are going to relocate and so forth into those areas where there's a product available and so forth. Our product, we need more product in the office, Class A office than we have right now. And as I told you before, we look at our website traffic from site consultants, others are looking at, they're looking at product, they're not looking at land. So that's something to bear in mind when you think about this equation. The other is that, and I haven't looked specifically at the comprehensive plan in terms of how much typically comprehensive plans have way more office, commercial, industrial, and more residential than the need is going to go, because they are long-term in nature. You're talking about 20, 30 years in the future as opposed to what you're looking at right now. And this brings it to the essential issue that we all face, is the bird in hand proposition. Do you take a development that's come to you now, a developer, say of residential property, that says, hey, listen, I know the comprehensive plan says this, or the zoning ordinance says that, the intent was to have this as commercial or office or whatever, but there is no demand. I can tell you, I've seen the proffer amendments coming through, I've seen the market analyses that go with it. I would say there is no demand for this kind of commercial or industrial property out here. I couldn't get a bank loan on that to do that deal if I had to. There's no clients that want to do this. But I have a proposition for you, and that is to build a townhouse or an apartment complex and so forth. So the dilemma that the county board faces, do we, especially on vacant property, do we take this deal that's being offered to us right now, or that may not be exactly what we wanted, long-term or planned for, but is available to us right now? Versus holding out for, and I'm not arguing conceptually Bob's point, holding out for that longer term deal that we want an office development and so forth. I would say that the course, the wiser course seems to be take what's being offered to you right now, because while you're waiting for perfection and that best deal, you could be waiting a really long time, and it might never happen. So that's a dilemma, a planning decision, an economic development decision that the board has to weigh every time something is, being presented to them. And that's a tough decision, but it's driven by the market more than anything else. Having said that, and I, again, haven't looked enough at to answer your question in terms of long-term, as you look at the county's plan, there seems to be enough of all land uses that are being particularly planned for. The question is, how do you concentrate those in a way that, and kind of going back to the Fairfax model, the chairman raised these centers of focus, centers of employment and so forth. People do want focused development, corridors, centers, many of them transit-oriented. TOD, transit-oriented development, is the word in the Washington area because of our terrible transportation system. So if you have a metro stop or 2 or 3, like Tyson's is getting 4 new ones now as they rebuild. They're going to they want 100 million new square feet of office space in Tyson's, which is inconceivable. They're going to have to tear down most of Tyson's, I think, to get there. But the fact of the matter is, those are where the developers are looking for those kind of sites. And Prince William is challenged with not having that kind of transportation asset in its place. We have VRE, but the trains are running one way, to the point that, really, I agree with you. We need a reverse commute train there. We need people getting on at Union Station, taking VRE down Route 1, down to North, Woodbridge. That's what needs to happen down to that area. Likewise, but you have going back to my early comment about Prince William being different markets, you also have the Gainesville area, the western area, that needs, there are VRE stops planned out there, no question about it. But then you've got this opportunity with the 234 bi-county connector. They would take it to Dulles. Well, I'm just saying, those are the kind of decisions from a planning and land use perspective that the county has to weigh as they look at this going forward. But on the land use question, as I look at the comprehensive plan, it seems that there is enough of all those uses because that is a long-term document.
Al?
Jack Kuyumjian in the Occoquan Magisterial District. I have this for the whole panel, but just wanted to ask the question about the North Woodbridge study area, because that, for redevelopment and vision in the eastern end of the county, that seems to be a big apple for Prince William County. And with the federal government putting in investment in infrastructure for the roadway, interchange, and all of that that's taking place, with Belmont Bay there, we heard in just casual discussions that some of the bankers were saying to the folks that might want, that have the land for the high-rise residential, say, that they might not be able to get the mortgage money to build those because they're better off putting in garden apartments instead of the high-rises for the smart growth that should be there in that corridor. And I'm wondering how much of this driver is the banker, are the bankers shortening our vision for what ought to be going in that area? And I just asked that question because all this has to come together. There are a lot of players involved, and we need to have that vision mature in a fashion that those things that we think would be positive for that area would become a reality. So I just asked that question. There's a lot in there, but what about having other people shorten our vision, like the mortgage bankers?
I think there was a question or two in there, so Mr. Sherman?
I think that Jack is raising a very, very good point. One that I was trying to make is that our plans have to be realistic. And there will continue to be a lot of transportation problems for North Woodbridge. North Woodbridge is even after the new flyover is built for Route 1, is going to be challenged in terms of accessibility. The interstate interchange there at North Woodbridge is not very good, and that's where most of the traffic is going to come in and out. And so it has a lot of constraints in terms of level of service. getting from I-95 over to North Woodbridge. You're going to have a lot of constraints with the North Woodbridge area because of Route 1 and because of the flyover and because of the separations that are necessary in order to get into the properties. It's almost as if you're directly on the corner in North Woodbridge, you may as well be a mile away from the corner because people have to drive past your destination, turn and come back to it in order to get to it because of the interstate access requirements and because of the state highway access requirements. But you made another point too, and that had to do with our bankers curtailing our ability and our vision. And they do have an effect. But it's not just bankers. Behind every project is